Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good grief. It's another episode of Livestream Insiders. It's episode 169. Hello, I'm Peter Stewart, and together with Krishna Day, we like to keep you updated with everything that's happening in the world of live streaming. And today, gosh, we've got quite a few updates to bring you. We've got updates with Twitter, or with Periscope specifically, part of Twitter. We've also got an update to Skype and Dropbox as well, and also an interesting use case study from Krishna too. And also we've got some other things to bring you over the next 30 minutes right here on Livestream Insiders.
Great to be back. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us live, or for those watching on the replay, or even listening to the podcast episode afterwards. As Peter said, we've got lots of news for you, and we really are passionate about bringing you best practice tips and case studies in terms of helping you, whether you're just getting started with live streaming or you actually have been doing this for quite some time. I know a lot of the people who join us live have got a lot of experience, are integrating live themselves. So really welcome your comments, and we'll do our best to watch out for them. And I'm going to pass it straight back to Peter to get on with the first story. For me, it's probably one of the most pieces of exciting news that I anticipate we'll hear this year.
Absolutely, and Krishna will be back in a few moments' time with updates to a video production software. So keep it here on Livestream Insiders for the next 30 minutes, and you won't miss a thing. And we're really pleased and really interested to see the update that came from Periscope a little bit earlier on in the week. You probably have heard about it, but let's quickly run through what it is. You're now able to invite guests into your Periscope stream. So you can invite them in audio only at this stage, and up to 3 guests at one time. So it's really interesting stuff. And if one guest drops off, then new ones can be added. And we guess Krishna and I were mulling over this over the course of the week, both by ourselves and with other people. At least I certainly was. And this is probably because Periscope/Twitter wants to get a bit more into the podcast area. So they want to make it really easy for people to have conversations on the screen and actually swap ideas in real time, as opposed to those kind of rather awkward, pesky text messages that come up on the screen instead. And it is something which they've been talking about for a while, so not a huge surprise to some of us in the know, but certainly it's really great to actually see it activated. Now, as I say, what at the moment happens is that you're able to go into someone else's broadcast via audio only. We do understand 2 things. First of all, that this is going to be made video compatible in the not too distant future, and also then both of those features are going to be enabled into Twitter live video as well. It's a bit complicated. We've spoken about this before. It's in the book, the live streaming handbook, but of course, as you know, Twitter owns Periscope, and it's really interesting to actually use Periscope because, as I've said before, it's a bit of a sleeping giant. So the allow guest option needs to be configured. You as a broadcaster are going that you need to enable the tool so people know that that is your intention to invite people into your live broadcast. You can choose from a list of the viewers, and then the viewer is going to be able to get a countdown so they know when they're about to go live, and they can finish the broadcast and you can finish their contribution to it at any stage. So as I say, it goes a step beyond the usual kind of comment tool. And also there's another functionality for people who are watching the screen. They can either watch you as the host in the main part of the screen, or they can tap on the avatar of the guest and then they fill up most of the screen instead. And it is available for iOS and Android.
So let's just talk us quickly through in terms of what happens. Now, I have to say, I've personally been in contact with Periscope during the course of this week, because I didn't see anywhere that it said it was rolling out over a slow period of time. So I was really excited. I actually saw it as soon as I noticed it had been released, and I noticed that, in fact, someone I know was actually able to do this in terms of they're in the US. So whether it's moving out by different region, I don't know. Let us know in the comments if you've got access to this. So you'll know you've got access as a broadcaster if, for example, you see a little icon at the bottom with two little faces. And in terms of those two faces, that allows you to enable or disable inviting somebody into the live stream. As Peter has already mentioned, you can have up to 3 people, and you can just boot them out if you wish to do so. There's a little cross. So when somebody actually comes into your live stream, right before you start, you have to make sure you enable the fact that you do want to invite people to come on. So of course you could be doing this for somebody you know. You might just do it as an open forum, but obviously if it's somebody you know, then you might want to do a little bit of a private test beforehand so they don't have any problems in terms of understanding what needs to happen at their end. So make sure you've got the latest update of the app on your device. I certainly have. As I said, for me, it's not yet rolled out, and certainly the people I've seen using it have been in the US. What will happen is once you've enabled it, people will then be able to see, and I'll show you a screenshot in a moment, but what they will see. But they'll see the 2 little icons or the 2 little faces, and that means that they can then invite somebody in. But as you see, in terms of if you're looking at the screenshots of this show, you actually can allow yourself to invite guests, and then when they come in, you actually both get a countdown of that person coming in. I think it's a 5-second countdown. We will have in the notes for you at the end of the show the link to the help page from Periscope, so you can go through this step by step yourself. And then let's say somebody else wants to come in. Maybe you've got lots of people who want to join you and you're asking for their opinions. You can just hit the little cross when you actually see that avatar, and then they will drop out and then come back in again. Now, I do think it's fantastic that we've actually got the ability to have 3 other people, and it's on a mobile device. Remember, we actually can't do that natively on Facebook. You can have one other person with you on Facebook. You can have one other person with you if you're doing an Instagram Live. So I think that Periscope has stolen charge here. They have said that they're working on video. I actually watched a couple of live streams that they were doing, and they also jumped onto a live stream with somebody who was actually testing the feature out, and the developer of the feature was taking feedback at that point in time. And so one of the criticisms that people had was, oh, the avatar is very small. It's going to be quite challenging to manage 4 people, particularly when video comes, in terms of when you're actually opening it up there on your device, and it's just on a mobile device. One of the things that I do like, though, is the fact that as an individual, you can actually invite yourself in terms of into that broadcast. So when you open it up, and as I said, I could actually go on to somebody else's, but I just can't broadcast myself, inviting other people on. When you open up the app, in fact, you might get a notification like I did, that says go live together. And then you actually will find that you can see the 2 little icons, or in fact, if you just do the 3 little buttons at the bottom, if you click on that, then you'll find it there. Now, one of the challenges that Periscope have had is there's a lot for them to manage when they're actually look to make this available. So they're having to make some priorities. So for example, some of you might be enabling super hearts to get donations from your viewers. And if that's the case, that wasn't easily available in terms of with this update. Now they've done an update since the original update, and I know they're actually looking to tweak various things. Things like sharing to Twitter wasn't enabled when they first made it available. It wasn't available for sharing over to Facebook, and obviously that's a great way, from when you're watching in the middle of a live stream to be able to get more visibility. So the sharing of the broadcast that was available initially was actually just to share the broadcast to other people within Periscope, not outside of Periscope, as they've successfully had. And then you actually will get, if you click on the icons where it says join as a guest, you'll then get the opportunity to then click on the button to say ask to join. I chose not to at that point in time because I was just enjoying listening to what other people were saying and what they thought of the facility. As I said, for me, this is a really exciting update. I'm delighted that, they've been testing this out. They're testing it with audio first. Video is going to be coming. Be aware, though, of course, It's going to need some good processing power and a good Wi-Fi if you're on Wi-Fi, or make sure you're on that unlimited data package for your mobile devices. I use Wi-Fi a lot in terms of when I'm actually streaming on my mobile devices. But one of the things that you might just want to be aware of is, particularly when video comes, it will be very content heavy. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can use the other features like share from a point of time in the live stream. You can make sure there's a particular thumbnail. I hope at some stage they introduce the ability to have a custom thumbnail that you can upload. That's not yet available. But it's really good to see this. And also, of course, Periscope was really initiated in other markets outside of the US, outside of the UK, outside of Canada, in terms of allowing people to tell their stories. And so in this particular case, obviously, audio is pretty important in those markets in terms of people not having access to perhaps unlimited bandwidth in terms of on their devices and packages and the cost of that as well. So I'm not surprised to see audio coming first, and it's great that we've got audio, and it's even better that we don't have to now use something like Periscope Producer. If you're a mobile live streamer, of course you can bring guests in with Periscope Producer, but now we can just do this on our mobile device. I cannot wait personally to be able to have access to these features. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just check in with Peter, and let's see if we can hear you now, Peter.
Yeah, sorry about that. Don't know what happened there, but I'm back, and I'll hand back to Krishna for the next update. But I will be back in a few moments' time to tell you about some changes to Skype. It's not really live streaming per se as we know it when you kind of think about Periscope and Twitter Live and Facebook Live and Twitch and all of the others. However, a really interesting thing they've come up, which also kind of fits in with security and privacy and things like that. It's amazing what they've done. And I'm just wondering if there is a way that you could utilize that in some of the other more proper live streaming apps. Intrigued? I'll tell you about that in a few minutes' time. First, back to Krishna, because she's got an update to some live streaming software that's been announced this week.
We've talked about BrandLive a few times, mainly in terms of the live streams they've been doing with large organizations. So I was interested to see, in fact, I noticed this on their Facebook page, middle of this week, the fact that they had introduced a new piece of software attached to their current tools that they have. They have integrations with lots of different tools. However, BrandLive is really very much in terms of enterprise solutions. However, what they've now introduced is something that I think will be very powerful. Let's say, for example, you're a communications person, a PR person, you're an HR person, and perhaps you've got some limited budgets in terms of live streams. You'd like to have external resources to be there to actually help you out, but you actually want to be able to use things yourself internally. And I come across that all the time, particularly in terms of with communications professionals. And so what they've done is, this is something that's been inspired by their customers, they say, and basically they found that there was an opportunity in terms of how can you have high quality productions without purchasing expensive hardware. So, perhaps you've got limitations, for example, in terms of your processing power on your computer. I know that's the case with lots of organizations. Sometimes people have better technology at home than they do in their office in terms of when they're in large enterprises. And perhaps you haven't got that ability to actually bring in a team of experts. So just to let you know, this is not a standalone product. So I actually reached out to them and asked them a few questions. We will, as I said earlier on, have all the links available for you for the things that we talk about today. During the course of the show, that will be available at the end of the show. So we've got some links to let you know about it. But there are a few different features that are available now with this. So as I said, it's not standalone. It's really aimed at their customers. And so it's a part of the BrandLive platform. So one of the things you have is the ability to have up to 4 cameras. And also you can use pre-recorded content and screen sharing, picture-in-picture, lower thirds, and mixed media content. I know those of you who are experts at live streaming will say, well, I can do all of those things with our software. For example, you might be using Wirecast vMix Ecamm Live, or whatever it might be. This, as I said, is mainly aimed at enterprise organizations, and so they've got perhaps not experience of using some of those tools. You can add visual effects. You can actually have different brightness levels. You can have preset filters and contrast settings. You can simulcast your events also to 4 social media channels using RTMP. So that's really interesting because, in fact, the thing I'm going to talk about later on is show an example. They actually stream to a number of different platforms. Comments and chat, we know how important that is to be able to see what people are commenting and actually bring that content into the live stream in terms of let's say a Q&A if you're doing a town hall, as we've talked about recently. And they're also going to be introducing the remote presenter, which is multiple presenters from anywhere. So at this point in time, those multiple cameras have to obviously be in the same location, probably a bit like you had with other platforms where you had to be on the same Wi-Fi connection. They're actually going to be introducing this, that people can be anywhere, which I think will be really very valuable for organizations to have that facility. Just as I mentioned, it's not a standalone product, it's part of the BrandLive platform, and so the payment for it or the investment is on a subscription basis, and their range, as I said, this is aimed at enterprises, is between 18,000 and 60,000 in terms of that's their product, that's for the BrandLive product. But if you are an enterprise, or if you're working with enterprises, or you're a corporate communications specialist, or a marketing specialist who's saying, you know, we'd love to do more live, but the limitation is our budget for some things. We don't need the high production. We don't need all the cameras. We don't need to have all the lights. There are times and places, let's say, for investor relations, communications, or annual reports that you're doing, other big events. You actually want to have that, but inside the enterprise, you might be saying, okay, we want to manage more of this ourselves. And we're seeing organizations do more and more of that, be that managing their own digital, managing their own social media, developing their own content in-house. And therefore, for me, it follows suit that actually BrandLive would be actually able to introduce this as well. So check them out, follow them on Facebook. They do have a number of interesting live streams they do in terms of case studies, and you'll be able to find all the links to their product, their new BrandLive Producer, actually in the show notes at the end of the show. Peter, I'm going to be passing back to you in terms of you were talking about Skype. And I have to admit, I haven't tested this out. I don't know if you have, because this is something that's available on desktop. And most of the time, if I use Skype at all these days, I'm doing so on mobile. So let me just pass the story back to yourself, Peter, and I'm going to come back to the comments just to see if anybody's been got any questions or comments about the story so far.
But let me bring you that story about Skype. Now, this is really interesting because what Microsoft have managed to do, and I'm just wondering whether or not there's an interesting way that you could maybe use this if this kind of feature or functionality came to something like Facebook Live, Twitch, or Periscope, for example. Don't know whether you've heard, but Microsoft is adding automatic background blur to Skype video calls. Why would they want to do that? Well, maybe you're doing a business call from your office and there are some things behind you or people behind you which you don't want other people to see. Maybe books on your bookshelf, it may be other people moving around the office. So for privacy and security reasons, you will be able to have the background blurred out. It could be that you've got a very cluttered office, for example. It may be that you're actually working from somewhere else, a public space like a cafe, public/private space, that people in that cafe would have a certain expectation of privacy. And you may think, I shouldn't actually be showing them. Maybe there are kids in the background, for example. There's another reason. So this is a really interesting kind of magical technical solution to get round that particular problem. Now, no word as yet on whether mobile versions of Skype will also get this functionality, but certainly on the desktop version, and of course the desktop version also includes your laptops as well, hence the reason why you might be in a cafe and doing that kind of thing. So PC and laptop, and it's all enabled via the video call menu actually in Skype. How's it all being done? A little bit of magic is actually how it happens. Microsoft saying that they're using some artificial intelligence for blurring out everything that's behind you, but keeping everything that is you actually in focus. And everything that is you, obviously there's a bit of face detection going on there, a bit of hair detection, and maybe your hands as well. Maybe you're gesticulating or holding your head in your hands at what is going on with the world. It doesn't blur out you, but it does blur out everything that is happening behind you. I don't know what you think of that, Krishna, but I think that's really interesting. That's really kind of clever stuff. But actually, I suppose it's using similar technology to the masks that Periscope and Facebook have been using for a while. That is also, of course, kind of software that kind of, I'm right in thinking they're kind of using that in reverse, aren't they?
Absolutely. I think it's really helpful. If you do read the article from Skype themselves, which is in the curation, they've got a little line at the bottom is that they will do their best, but they cannot guarantee your background will be blurred. So that's their obviously get out of jail card in terms of, I thought I was not showing anything inappropriate behind me, and inappropriate could be whatever, couldn't it? At a personal or a business level. And it's like, okay, I was hoping all of that was blurred. So really interesting to see this. As I said, I have not tested it out because I rarely use Skype. I can't even remember the last time I used Skype on desktop. It's probably a year ago, because if I use Skype, it's usually on my mobile device. Are you planning to test it out at all, Peter?
I rarely use Skype. We use a different system at work when we're talking one to another around different parts of the UK. So it's not something that I've used for many years. Last time I used it, I think, was when I was doing a series of guest interviews on podcasts and that kind of thing. So therefore, it's useful. But it sounds interesting technology that Microsoft has come up with.
Well, talking about news organisations, I'm going to come to my last couple of stories. The first one is very brief. Just want to give you a heads up. It's actually from that news organisation we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And I think Peter actually told us about the fact that they were going live to do a behind the scenes of actually celebrating 30 years of Sky News. And so as part of that, they announced in advance that they were actually going to be doing a behind the scenes tour of the news station. And I have to say, I caught it live, and it was rather addictive. I actually had to drive myself away from actually watching what was going on. I really was intrigued by it. And in fact, that's how you've got a few screenshots here, because I actually was watching it live. So you actually had the opportunity to see the people who were doing the interviews for the live stream. You saw behind the scenes in terms of preparation for sessions coming on. You also saw them actually going live, and you could hear the countdown. So if you were at all interested in terms of going into a news organization, media organization, it definitely was worth watching. They had a specific hashtag for the event, and it's actually called Sky News Raw, hashtag Sky News Raw. I have to say, not everybody liked it. I did find a couple of articles by one news organisation who were not so complimentary, to the extent that somebody I know who works for Sky News actually went to Twitter and said, you know, can't you just at least give us some credit for what we've done? So they were not, as I said, very complimentary. You can find those in the curation. A couple of things of note, though, I think we can all take from what they did in terms of things that were really helpful. Obviously, it was a big event, so they had a specific hashtag for that event, so that's always worthwhile. If you're just doing something like we do at once a week, we've got a regular show, we have a hashtag for our show, but if you have a particular event or conference, I thought it was great that they actually had that hashtag. They did well in terms of promoting it and made sure people knew about it in advance. It was very well produced, as I'm sure you can imagine, but what they did do is you could actually get a replay of it on YouTube. So that's great if you're actually just reliant on the platform that you're streaming to. In fact, how did I come across it? I saw it live. I'd forgotten about the day it was going to be, and I happened to be on Periscope trying to see if I could have this opportunity to actually join somebody in terms of a live stream, and was that broadcast feature available to me. And I have to say that most of the people I'm seeing streaming on Periscope at the moment are actually organizations and news organizations. And so that's how I came across it. So I watched it on Periscope, but they repurposed the content also as a small video. So if you want to grab just the highlights, their best bits as they describe it, they've got some content over on Twitter, and they've also got content on YouTube. You can get all access to those. And the other thing I really like that they've done, which I think we can all learn from, is they also showed there's actually somebody who works in terms of for Sky News in terms of the design. And so you actually can look at the iterations of, they actually had specific branding for Sky News Raw. And actually the person has posted that design work over on Behance. So I thought it was really interesting that they actually managed to get some extra mileage out of it. Certainly not all audiences liked it, including the media didn't all like it or were not as complimentary, and certainly some members of the public weren't. But I have to say it was really very courageous of Sky News to do it, because they didn't know what was going to be released as stories. And on that day, unfortunately, there was a horrific situation that happened in terms of some young children dying, and that was actually picked up during the course of the whole of this live stream. And I'm sure that must have been challenging for the people involved to actually think about how they were trying to deal with the story and how they were going to present the story, but also they were conscious that the camera was on top of them as well, capturing every little movement that they made as well. So I'll leave you to read about all of those things. As I said, very brave of Sky News. I was delighted to see it. As I said, I was intrigued. I stuck around for longer than I probably should have, but I appreciate them doing it. Let me tell you the last thing I want to share with you. You might have seen this if you follow me on my other channels in terms of on social media. Really nice update that's come from Dropbox, which I think is going to be really helpful for all of us in terms of if we're looking to do things that say make some editing to recorded video that you want to put into your live stream. If you want to do some edits of your live stream, let's say, for example, the Sky News example, where they actually edited out the best bits, that this is a way for them to do that. But also if you wanted to have it as a podcast as well. And I don't know of any other organization, any other software that allows this to happen. If you do, please let me know. And what I'm talking about is this new feature from Dropbox that they've introduced. And you might have seen it if you actually have got Dropbox, or you might have seen it being mentioned in the update to the app. I'm on Dropbox every single day. I know some organizations don't allow use of Dropbox, but I use Dropbox literally every day on my mobile devices and on my desktop, moving files back and forward, saving files to it. And what you can do now, and I noticed it in the app when it said they've got comments by time code. So what can happen is now you can go through a video or an audio and you can make a comment. So you might say, edit this bit out or cut straight to this point. And as the person who's doing the editing, I know, and Peter knows what it's like when you're editing and you've got other people inputting into it. It can be rather challenging, to say the least. But actually you now can actually go to that specific time point, because the content can be referenced at that time point. Now, a couple of things that I want to tell you about this new feature. You can add timestamps to comments so other people can jump straight to that exact time frame. You can adjust and scrub through the videos with thumbnails and audio previews, which I think is really helpful. If you kind of editing, you'll know that from your own editing software. There's also different file types. There's over 30 different video and audio file types, which also include QuickTime, MPEG-4, MP3, and WAV. You don't need to compress your files. You'll know as well as I do, if you're trying to send video or audio files and they're big, you have to reduce the compression of it. Now you don't have to do it. Just send a link to the people that you want to actually comment, or maybe a comment from a client, or it might be somebody inside your organization. And if you use the @mention feature, you can mention specific feature who are commenting for their feedback and input, like you can do, for example, in Google Docs, where you can @mention, then somebody will get a notification about it. I said, really interesting that they've got this. Downside is that if you're using the free version, or if you're using the lower cost version in terms of a paid for version, it's not going to be available. I think this is upsetting for those of you like me. I actually don't use the more expensive version. So if you have to use a Dropbox Professional, Business Advanced, Enterprise or Education account to make sure that you have access to this feature. Of course, it's going to be worth you having access if you're doing a lot of audio and video editing. I know there are other platforms that are available that you actually can use to actually do collaborative commenting and feedback if you're using video. For example, Vimeo allows you to do that. I've got a Vimeo account and I could invite other people in to actually give comments on that. And also the same in terms of Remark HQ. I haven't used that personally. But to my knowledge, I certainly know for Vimeo, you can't use it in terms of for video content. That's why I think this is really intriguing, a really good product. And for those of you who do a lot of editing with colleagues, with clients, and actually having their opportunity for them to give comments or for you to comment, they might be saying, I recommend we jump straight to here, in terms of the next part of the story, if you were somebody like editing a piece like Sky would have had to do to get to their best bits, and have that approved through that. I think it's a great feature that Dropbox have introduced. Perhaps if we all go out and say, please make it available for your other accounts, not just for the higher end paid for accounts, they may well listen to us. But if you want more details of that, find them in the show notes at the end of the show.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us on episode 169 of Livestream Insiders. Keep this end piece short. We'll be back in 7 days to update you again with everything that's happening in the world of live streaming. I'm Peter Stewart, and from me, Krishna Day as well. Thank you very much indeed for watching.